Hello and welcome to the Innovation Women Speak webinar series. My name is Bobby Carlton, and for those of you not familiar with Innovation Women, we are a visibility bureau for entrepreneurial, technical, and professional women. We help connect female speakers with speaking opportunities, and we connect event managers with speakers. Our mission is to eliminate the all-male, all-pale, all-stale panels you see so often at industry events. Unlike a traditional speakers bureau, our goal is gender-balanced conferences and events. It's so much more than a traditional speakers bureau. Event managers can find speakers, and speakers can find speaking engagements and other visibility opportunities. And you know that common question we all get, do you know other women who can speak on our panel? Well, at last, the answer is yes. You can absolutely find them on Innovation Women. Speakers on our platform can also invite other speakers. And we just rolled out some new features. So now you can apply for opportunities online. Unlike a traditional speakers bureau, when you join Innovation Women, you get all of this. You get a profile on our website so event managers can find you. We have a weekly exclusive newsletter that goes out just to our speakers with new speaking opportunities every single week. You get access to our member directory of over 60 speakers. You have an opportunity to be a guest speaker on our webinar series. That's this one. You also get access to great speaker resources. We help you optimize your profile. We tell you where to find opportunities, how to submit speaker proposals, among other things. You get access to Innovation Women pop-up events. You can get speaking video for your profile. And if you're an author, we promote our author/speakers on our Innovation Women Amazon store. And if you're looking for great books written by women, go there right now. It's amazon.com/womeninno. So that is a great place to find great books written by our speakers. We also promote our speakers. We promote them on our social media accounts. And if you're booked for a speaking opportunity through our platform, we want to let everybody know. Earlier, we also did a website update, and now our event managers can post calls for speakers directly on the platform. Our speakers can reach out and apply for those calls for speakers right on the platform. And the speaker dashboard allows you to manage all of your speaking engagements easily right in one place. We also have an improved search function to make it easier to find the right speaker. And you can share a link to your public profile. Show the world you're an Innovation Women member. If you'd like more information on Innovation Women, please go to our website or use the bit.ly link here and sign up for our weekly newsletter. For our webinar attendees, we have a special opportunity for you. You can get 20% off your first year until midnight tonight. Like coffee money. The membership will actually only cost you the same amount as buying a grande cafe latte at Starbucks, just 22 days out of the year. And I know you're buying coffee every day. So before we go to today's speaker, I'd like to give a plug to our next speaker. So in 2 weeks, we will be hearing from our first white guy on the Innovation Women webinar series. Robert Principe is going to be joining us for a fireside chat to discuss the diversity dividend, when diversity and inclusion become a key enabler of growth and makes a positive impact to a company's financial performance. This is the first time I've had a conversation with a white male on the Innovation Women Speaker Series. But Robert has guided organizations for more than 25 years. He's been addressing the challenges of implementing effective diversity and inclusion strategies. His background includes more than a decade as a diversity and inclusion manager, and his development of 10 steps for white men to become better allies for diversity and inclusion is a direct result of his own diversity and inclusion journey. Cisgender heterosexual male, as well as from years of gathering data while facilitating these kinds of focus groups. So that webinar is in 2 weeks. It's June 12th. We'll share a link through the platform so you can register today. Now I want to go over some logistics to make sure you get the most out of today's webinar. And this is one of these webinars that I've been personally waiting for because I'm hoping that it will make our slides look gorgeous from now on. What you're seeing now is an annotated version of your screen. Below the video viewing window, there are tabs. The default tab is Ask a Question. You can type in a question at any point during the program. The Attachments tab is where you'll see documents from our speaker and the link to sign up for our next webinar. You can download those attachments at any time. The tab called Rate This helps us determine what you like. We read all the feedback, so feel free to tell us what you think. And you also have the ability to enlarge your screen to view it in full screen mode. If at any time you need audio help, please feel free to click on the Help button at the bottom of the screen. So on to today's presentation. Laura Foley, a presentation designer and consultant, is joining us to help us make our presentations more impactful and more powerful. Laura is a presentation designer and consultant. She will review some common slide design mistakes and then will show us how to fix them. So, Laura,
yes,
take it away.
Will do. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Foley, as Bobby said, and I am a presentation designer. Maybe you've never heard of a presentation designer. It's not surprising because presentation design is something that it's a specialty, a niche thing that you have to look for. But what I'm going to do today is I am going to teach you some of the things that I do as a presentation designer so that you can recognize why slides aren't looking so hot and figure out what you can do to change that and improve the way they look. I have a background in graphic design, went to art school, but what I learned about PowerPoint was that the principles that I learned as a graphic designer and the things that I do in marketing and copywriting can all be combined into the umbrella of presentation design. When you start thinking about your presentations as a marketing tool or as a teaching tool rather than a PowerPoint that I have to do, then it's easy to make that shift of changing the way that you create them to get the results from your presentation that you're looking for. Now, during the presentation, you might have some questions, and what's going to happen is that, as Bobby suggested, you can type your questions into the question screen on your on the webinar website, and as your questions come up, you can Bobby will be reviewing them, and if there are questions that have to do with things that I've just said, then I'll take the time to stop, interrupt the presentation, and address those questions. If you have questions that are not related directly to what I've just talked about or things that occur to you, please do type them into that question window. And in the middle of the presentation, I'm going to stop and address any questions that might have come up. And at the end of the presentation, I'll also address questions that come up. So
actually, I'm going to start right off by interrupting and say we do have a question, and someone is asking, is there a way to get a screenshot of one of the slides?
A way for the viewer to take a screenshot of the slides as they appear, you mean?
I think so. I think it's literally just a print screen, folks, and you will have a copy of what you see on the screen.
Yes, and if you're on a Mac, it's going to be the Command-Shift-F4, Command-Shift-4, and then you can drag the area that you want to copy. This is a good opportunity for me to tell you that there are some attachments in this webinar, and one of them is a handout sheet. And the handout sheet has got little bitty thumbnails of the slides that you'll be seeing today, as well as the text of what I'm talking about. and contact information and helpful links. So you don't have to be frantically shooting every screen that you see, though you're welcome to do so if that's what you'd like to do. Any other questions before I get going?
I think you are a go.
Cleared hot. Okay. So, how many of you in the audience love PowerPoint? You're crazy-eyed, happy about it like this lady, right? Probably not too many of you. The reason is usually people don't use PowerPoint because they really want to. It's because they have to. They've been given an assignment. They've been told they have to create slides for a presentation they're giving or teaching that they're doing. And PowerPoint is the de facto slide design tool. It's the #1 slide design tool in the world, in fact. And the other tools such as Google Slides and Keynote, all very similar. They tend to mimic PowerPoint. What I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to stress PowerPoint because that's the tool that I use. But if you are a Google Slides user, if you are a Keynote user, even if you're a Prezi user, you can just substitute those name brands in your head as I'm saying PowerPoint. But usually people make presentations because they've been asked to. They've had to do it. Now, at this point in your career, even if you're a student, you're not developed your career yet, you probably know how to use PowerPoint. But not everyone uses PowerPoint well. Just like if you have a hammer, that doesn't make you a master carpenter. Knowing how to use PowerPoint doesn't make you a presentation design expert. But that's going to change today. Because during this webinar, I'm going to give you a lot of information on how you can improve the way you use PowerPoint. And these are very easy to remember tips that you can bring to your slide design assignments again and again. You don't have to have that graphic design training or marketing background to be a good slide designer. The tips that I'm going to tell you are easy to learn, and you can start using them right away. The result of this presentation is that you're going to be able to recognize when slides don't look so great, and you'll learn how to redesign them to make them better looking and easier to understand. So it's not just making them better looking. It's making them work well for the communication that you're trying to give to your audience. It is making slides that serve your audience and that further the goal of your presentation. So the goal of your presentation might be that you want to sell something, or you want to change someone's ideas about something, or you want to present information to somebody. Knowing those goals will help drive your design decisions when you are faced with yucky slides that need to do a better job. Now, you've probably heard about the secret sauce, the hidden tricks and tips that are closely guarded trade secrets to getting things done, to creating things. This is a not-so-secret sauce because it is very, very straightforward, and it's common sense, really. The first thing we're going to concentrate on is how or why to put less stuff on your slides, why that's a good idea, and why people tend not to do it. We're also going to fall back on the adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm sure that's something you've all heard before. I'm going to tell you that it is very true and why. And we're going to combine putting less stuff on our slides and pictures with a method that I call Analyze and Synthesize. I'll explain what that means in depth later on, but essentially what it means is that you analyze the slide that you have to redesign, and then you figure out different ways to arrange that information, sometimes including pictures, sometimes including graphs, to make a slide that does a better job of communicating what you need it to do. So naturally, we're going to start on the left here. We're going to start about putting less stuff on your slides. Mies van der Rohe is a very famous architect, and this less is more is a maxim that he expressed to talk about why sometimes you can get greater results by showing less, by doing less, by having less things. So the reason that is pertinent in slide design is content-heavy slides are distracting, which means that if you've got a lot of stuff on the screen and you are essentially asking that people read it, then they're not going to be paying attention to you, right? How many times have you been to a presentation where you've seen a big wall of text on the screen and you just read it at your own pace and tune out the speaker? It's very common to do that, and in fact, it's very, scientifically, it's very difficult to pay attention to a speaker as you're reading text that may or may not be what exactly are the words coming out of that speaker's mouth. So you are dividing the audience's attention between you, the presenter, and the slides if there's too much stuff going on the slides. That leads to don't make your audience work. A lot of times, and I'll preface this by saying I work primarily with STEM professionals, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics professionals. They often put a lot of information on the slides in the hopes that the audience will connect the dots, will make those kinds of assumptions and add up all of the information to reach the conclusions that they themselves have spent time reaching. So it might be a year's worth of work up on a slide, and the presenter almost expects people to suddenly come to those conclusions that it took the presenter a year to reach. Don't make your audience work. It can be frustrating if someone doesn't get it. And also, too much content is difficult to understand. Not only what the content entails, like scientific notations or mathematical formulae, but having so much on the screen is difficult for an audience to figure out what's important, what is less important, what is the order in which they should be understanding things, how are relationships made on the information that's on the slide. It's a pain in the neck. And it really is, when you're doing that kind of slide design, you're asking audiences to drink from the fire hose. You are giving them a boatload of information about something that you know intimately well, expecting them to draw the same conclusions that you have over careful study, expecting them to be excited about information just for the information's sake alone. People are not going to respond well with a whole bunch of information like this. All they need sometimes is a little taste or a little bit of information at a time. Essentially, excess text and bullet points do not spark joy. Too much stuff on your slide is not going to help people to understand what you're talking about. I'll give you a great example of that. This is an actual presentation taken by a man named Zach Graham, and he was at this presentation where the presenter, who was on the right holding the microphone, did that for the entire presentation. He sat down behind a table and he turned to his back to the audience and he read the slides. Those of you who have been working in slide design since the early days probably recognize that dark blue background and the yellow text. That was quite standard at the time when slide design first came about. But this is just a terrible way to present to an audience. And I'm sure that some of you in this audience today have seen people turn their back to you and read the slides. It's painful to watch someone read the slides. It's an insult to your integrity. Well, not really integrity, but it's an insult to the audience in that if you just were going to read to them, then it would probably have been a much better use of their time if you had simply sent the slides to them rather than reading to them like they're little kids and you're the librarian. Another thing is that if you are reading the slides, you are not reading the audience. You can't look at the audience and see if they're glazing over, starting to look at their phones, filing their fingernails, whatever people do when they get bored. You can watch people check out, and you can adjust your speaking if you are looking at them and engaging with them. The reason we have live meetings and presentations in the first place is so that we can make that personal connection with the audience. And we're sure not going to do that by reading slides. The next thing I wanted to talk about was going over that old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You've probably heard that a million billion times, right? Well, a picture really is worth 1,000 words. So your first question might be, okay, that's great. Where can I find photos? I know. If I need a photo of a cat, I'm just going to look on Google, Yahoo, or Bing. I'm going to find a cat. No. Actually, this is something that people do a lot of, that they'll look for photographs if they're not already in the presentation they're redesigning. They'll find something on Google that looks really cool and just plop it in the photograph. But you can get in trouble for that in a couple of ways. First way is that a lot of times the images that you find on search engines can be small or low-resolution photographs that look really bad when they're projected onto a large screen or when they're projected large. Secondly, and maybe more importantly for larger companies and other organizations, is that you can be definitely violating copyright laws by using photographs that you find in a search engine without paying for them or without attributing them correctly. There are a number of paid-for, royalty-free photograph services that you can look for, but I'm going to do one better. I am going to give you a list of free websites that you can find. This is one of the handouts that I've uploaded, so you can either screenshot this or you can download the handout with the links. But these are my go-to photograph, royalty-free photograph sites. And they are, for the most part, very high resolution. They're posed, so it's not like someone goes out on the street and snaps someone on a phone and then puts that up there. They actually seem to be professional images. What's better is that they're copyright-free as well as cost-free, which means that you can use the photographs in your presentations as you like. And there's one I wanted to point out to you especially. It's this one here, second one up from the bottom. It's called nappy.co. Bobby talked a little bit earlier about how there's a lot of pale male stuff going on in panels and in conferences, but there also seems to be that in royalty-free photography. Nappy.co is people of color just being people, and it's great because you get to include people from the whole human diaspora in your presentations, and this particular website will help you to find interesting, well-shot photographs of people typing at computers, walking hand-in-hand on the beach, all those clip art, or rather royalty-free image cliches, but just gives you a wider spectrum of people to choose from. Now, I'm going to be quiet for a minute so that you can soak in the majesty of this slide and read it to yourselves. Pretty good, right? Really makes you want to go to the beach. But look what happens when we put in a picture. See, this is what I mean by using a picture and making it evoke what the words say. So if you read about it, you're seeing that it's a stunning vacation property and top winter sun destination, blah, blah, blah. But then here's the actual property. When you match a picture to the text, then it can let the audience imagine what it's like being there. You might, as a presenter, if you're presenting this slide, you might even describe the feeling of the warm sun on your face, the cool ocean breezes, the average year-round temperature being 75 degrees. Something like that will really make people think about, oh, this could be a wonderful winter escape. Interestingly, and this is probably something that you have figured out on your own, but you really need to use pictures that match your message. And this is, in fact, a scientifically proven thing, is that if you are going to use pictures in your presentation, you need to ensure that the pictures are evoking the text that you're talking about. People do remember the information better when they see pictures and hear words that describe what they're looking at. So here's what that would look like if we used a picture that wasn't quite what we are describing. Now this would be the back of the hotel in this beautiful Caribbean spot. And we see it looks like over here we've got a guy who's coming back from his lunch break. We've got this kind of chipped paint over here. The back of the building, we don't have any view of the ocean. I'm imagining the ocean is somewhere around here. So even though this is a picture of a Caribbean location, it's not the one that's going to make people really want to go here, because this looks like the back of any hotel except with tropical plants instead of whatever native plants they have around their location. So at this point, now that I've told you about using having less stuff on your slides and using pictures in your presentations, I'd like to take this moment to see if there are any questions from the audience that have come up.
Yes, indeed. We do have a few questions. One of them is a question I've often had as well, with is there a good way to present a list of info? How do you get a lot of content across that is important? I use slides to communicate with my clients is the question from the audience. But for example, the embarrassing slide that we start off with, a list of all the great opportunities and features of Innovation Women, is a big, long list. Is there any way to make that look better?
Yes, there is. And the way that I generally do it is if I have to actually make a list of things, like steps 1 through 10, then I will make it so that each item in the list appears as an animated sequence. And what that would look like is you would have, let's say, question or item number 1 would be there, and you'd only see item number 1. So that would be the full 100% opacity bullet point number 1. And then when I talk about bullet point number 2, I would use animation to fade the first question back to about 75%, and then question number 2 would be at 100% opacity. So that means that 1 is up there to refer to, but because 2 is up there at 100% opacity, that's the important one I want people to see. And as I go down that list of 10 items, I keep fading back the ones that I have talked about and make sure that the things that I am talking about are more vivid. Another way I do this, I also can do it using word art, and I'll go forward to the next slide so you can see what that looks like. This is, not word art, Smartart. I keep mixing those up. Smartart is a way to make graphics out of text. And this is, there are a lot of different formats to choose from. This is a sequence format, and what you're looking at is the Smartart with a transparent white rectangle placed over the first 2 dots and the plus and the equal sign. So that means you can see that we've already talked about putting less stuff on our slides. We've already talked about pictures worth 1,000 words, but Analyze and Synthesize is at 100% opacity, so that's the thing that I want you to pay more attention to at this very moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. One of the other questions we've got here is, will the slides be available following the presentation? And I do believe they are in the attachments, right?
The handouts are available in the presentation. So you get the slides on the left, or image of the slide on the left, and then the speaker notes on the right, which means that you have, even if you give this to someone who wasn't here, everything that I'm talking about is somewhere in the speaker notes so that you can refer back to it. And it also has clickable links to those things like the photos I was talking about, so that you can use that PDF file to get right to those websites.
Another question we have is, do you recommend leaving off business logos on slides for professional presentations?
What an excellent question. Yes, I do. And the reason I do believe that that is a good thing to do is because usually if you're presenting to a client or if you're presenting at a conference, people remember that you are from XYZ company, and they're not going to forget it in the middle of your presentation. So the way I generally do it is I'll have a logo on the title slide so that when the audience is filtering in, not only do they have a logo, but they might have some other information that's useful, such as the speaker's contact information, conference website, Twitter handles, things like that, hashtags. And then and at the end, when you have the question slide, that's another opportunity to have the company logo and all the contact information. One thing I do like to do throughout the deck, though, is if I am presenting at a conference or not so much a client presentation, but to a large number of people, and we're trying to generate buzz about the conference, then I'll put my Twitter handle and a hashtag for the conference on each slide, because that is something that people need constant referral to. Does that make sense?
Yep. What about attribution on the bottom of the slide with the woman in the doctor coat? When did you do attribution? How much detail and what specific details?
I like to attribute everything all the time. And in this case, what I have done is the quote in orange comes directly from this paper. And because I'm using this for educational purposes, I'm quoting the entire thing. I'm not using their work as my own. I want to make sure that people know that I am using their I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name, Gulkazian, that Paula Gulkazian and Paul Fuz's information is theirs. And I got the idea to use it from them. And a source, putting in a source, and this is the most complete that I would be on this, that I've got the name of the paper, so name of the paper, I've got when it was published, the authors, and their affiliation. I'm not going to go into detail about what page, what paragraph, that's way too deep. So this would be enough to point people in the direction of this research if they wanted to find it for themselves. For other, oh wait, I was going to continue with the source. As far as the source goes, it also shows that you are not just pontificating, or you're not just pulling all this information out of the air, that there's actual scientific data to back this up. If I were doing financials, or if I were citing information of any kind that I didn't create or find myself, I would put the source on the slide in big enough text so that people could actually read it, not super tiny just to say, okay, I quoted my source, so that's great, but it's in 4-point type. No, you want to make it larger so that people can use that as a reference if they need to.
Okay, I want to make sure that we are able to do everything we need to do in the time allotted here. We want to get people back to work in an hour, but there is one additional question about the Smartart. Is there a simple tutorial on how to do the fade in and fade out?
If we have
not
time,
for today, obviously.
Well, it's not hard to do. If we have time today, at the end of the presentation, I will break out of the presenter role and show the screen that I use to work and show you how to do it.
All right.
You can either use the animation tools and animate the Smartart to show up at a certain time, or you can do what I do and put rectangles, transparent rectangles on top to obscure some of the information while still having it legible.
Great, thank you. Back to the presentation.
Okay, back to the presentation. Now, we're going to put together the having less stuff on your slides and pictures with the Analyze and Synthesize method. So, quite simply, when you're analyzing a slide, you are reading it and you are trying to pick out the main messages. At this stage, when you're reading it, you're going to be figuring out in your head if you need to make this more than one slide. I generally recommend that you have one big piece of information on each slide, and then each new piece of information is a new slide. Once you have determined what your main messages are, then you might find some clip art, or rather some royalty-free photography to put in there, and you combine your edited information, your edited text, with visuals. And when you're presenting something like this slide, the second slide, the Arches National Park with a beautiful photograph of Arches National Park, all you need to show is that, and then you start talking about some of the details that are on the slide. And then if there are other salient points you want to bring out, that would go on a new slide. And I'll show you how that works. Take a look at this slide. I'm not going to give you a lot of time to read it. That's a lot of stuff on a slide. I counted it. It's 149 words. There's a teeny tiny little picture right here. There's this unexplained giant green bar on the top, and it's just a lot of work for you to figure it out. Another thing that's going on with this slide is that some of the text is highlighted in a different color and underlined. So generation, economy, developing nations, developed countries, and birthright. I can't think of a reason why these would be highlighted. They don't appear to really have any coherency as a group. They're all highlighted in the same way, so you'd think that they were all being called out because they're important. But I really can't figure it out. Now, I'm not going to ask you to read and analyze this slide yourself because I have already done it. And what I determined was that this slide first is giving you a definition. What is family farming? What did it used to be? And what does family farming look like now? Because I've got these very definite 3 parts of this slide, I'm going to change this to 3 slides instead of just 1. So we're going to start with a definition. And that looks like this. In fact, that teeny tiny little photograph that was on the front was also available as a larger version of that photograph. And going back to that talk about attribution, down here, attribution and source, here is my attribution for this. And it's the image, the name of the person, or the image, copyright, name of the person who did it, the copyright, the license that I'm using, and where I found the photograph. All of that text that was on the slide before, this information here, that's really important stuff, and that goes into the speaker notes so that the person who is presenting will remember to talk about all of the things that used to be on the slide. This is a lot less visually cluttered, but by telling the people what was on, by putting all that information in the speaker notes, the presenter will be giving that information that used to be on that slide. Same thing here. This is what family farming used to be in the past. And here's a picture. It's a sepia tone photograph, so it's implying that it's in the past, and it used to be a way of life. And now those days are gone. The family farm is something that is sentimental. It's not something that we do a lot, and it's become highly technical. So now we have a picture of a family farm that's falling apart. Those days are gone. And that's the same slide but with a different picture on there. But it's showing the technical mechanized nature of farms now. This kind of presentation now has a bigger impact because the person who is delivering the presentation, when I was analyzing it, the presenter seemed kind of melancholy. He seemed like this was something that was sad that it was going past. And that's where this picture comes in, where we see a sad, decrepit building that is just falling down, and then we see something that absolutely is not family farming. The photographs give emotional impact to the words that the words themselves don't have. I get a lot of pushback on adding more slides to presentations. The reason is because people often gauge the length of a presentation by the number of slides. And it really doesn't work that way. The number of slides in your presentation is however many it takes you to get through the time of your presentation. So if I'm going to be presenting for 30 minutes, that doesn't mean I have 2 slides, 5 slides, 10 slides. I might have 50 slides, but I go through them so quickly, and they're part of animations and builds, that you won't notice how many slides there are. Another thing I'll point out is that there are no slide numbers on this slide or on any of my slides because I don't want people to be counting down how long it takes to get to the end. I don't want people realizing how many slides they've already seen because people still think that the more slides they have, the longer they've been listening to someone, and that's not how it works. So moving on to another slide with a lot of information. We've got a lot going on here. This is a very text-heavy slide, and we've got this weird title that's rotated, and it's got some pretty psychedelic colors on it. And then we've got these weird bullets. I don't even know what they are shaped, but they're a symbol that is being used as a bullet, and they just are quite distracting because you have this one bullet up top that has what the slide is about, and then all this information in here. And here's what the breakdown of that looks like. So you've got this first piece of information is on the slide, should be called out. Second piece of information, third piece, and so forth. So each one of these numbers, 1 through 5, represents 5 slides. When I think about how this could be made easier to look at, I'm thinking, well, maybe we need a person to look at, and we could put a picture of a doctor on here. So here we go. So now we have the Acme Medical Services, used to be the type that was on its side. The promotion of medical officers and dental surgeons to BPS 19 is the subject of all of the 5 slides I'm going to show you. And first, because we're talking about a percentage, it makes it very easy for people to see percentages of 100 with a pie chart. So 90% aren't, only 10% will be upgraded. And then we go on to each of those items that I highlighted first. So that promotion is based on seniority and fitness. Promotion is based on these levels of service. Promotion is based on this level of service if you're going to be appointed to BPS 18. And this is the cutoff. So that, having the information spread across the slides, it doesn't take any longer to go through 5 slides than it does to sit around and talk about these 5 topics on this slide, right? So spreading it out makes it easier for the audience to focus on one piece of information at a time, and it also allows the presenter to control the flow of information, unlike this. Now this is another case of trying to give lessons online or rather in a presentation by putting everything about the whole lesson onto one slide. Usually in training like this, the people are going to have backup information. They might have a folder with the training procedures. They might have a website that they can refer to. They're not going to really care that there's a phone number here in teeny text that they can call, or rather that they can fax things to. They're not going to remember that after the presentation. They're going to remember the big ticket items. So when I was analyzing this slide, I was thinking, what can go in the speaker notes? Information like this certainly would go in the speaker notes. And really all of this would go in the speaker notes, because an analysis shows that this is step 1 of the sales rep's duties. This is step 2, and this is step 3. All of the things in here that are completing the incident report form, that is stuff that the speaker will talk about, but the audience is going to have backup information to refer to that they can refer to again and again so they don't have to memorize it. So again, we're talking, this is what the subject is, how to handle complaints. We've got a nice happy case manager there. And the first thing you do is you immediately notify your branch manager. The second thing you do is to review guidelines and procedures. And the third thing to do would be to complete and file an incident report. The presenter, again, controls the rate of the information. That I just burned through steps 1, 2, 3 because I'm not doing any background description of it, but the presenter would take the time to talk about each one of these steps in turn. Now let's talk about pictures. I'll be quiet a moment so you can read this slide. Pretty scary stuff, right? So describing all the things about a shark and why you shouldn't pat them and don't do it. But this picture, combined with this symbol, tells you everything you need to know. Don't pat sharks. That's a bad thing to do. And this picture hits you with a visceral gut punch of, oh my God, this guy, how stupid can this guy be? That is what you want. You want people having an immediate reaction so that what you're telling them has that same, the impact of seeing a picture of this. I'm not sure how many of you might give a presentation on not being bitten by sharks, but you get the idea where if you can find an image that has an emotional impact, put it in a presentation. That will help to get your message across. This is a presentation that was given by a student based on the research that he did about famous people of Mali. There are some good ideas on this slide. For instance, they've got a complete bunch of text that the student has researched. We've got an image of one of the famous people of Mali right here and another famous person of Mali right there. Something that's not working on this slide is that the background image of the people riding camels and the spectators in the background is way too busy. We can't read this red text on top of it because this photograph is demanding a lot of attention. But I understood that the presenter wanted to have some kind of Malian background in there, and he wanted to make it look more interesting than just a flat background. So changing the background was a very first choice that I made, and I found a piece of Malian fabric online, or found an image of one rather, and made it a very neutral, bland desert color that evokes the deserts of Mali. And because we're talking about two famous people of Mali, I broke it into two slides. For this slide, this usually would be too much text for me to put on a slide. But if you have that much text, it's not going to take people 5 hours to read it. It might take people 30 seconds to read it. So as I have done when I've showed you text-heavy slides, I've been quiet while you read it. So that's what the presenter would do in this slide. And similarly, we've got the next person, the next famous person of Mali, and then the text over here. I'd like to talk a little bit about clip art and content. Now, clip art, I'll just go out and say it, gross. I don't like clip art. I like icons, which are generally one or two color flat images, representations of things. But this clip art really doesn't work for me because it looks very cartoonish. Also, when I'm analyzing this slide, not only did the clip art just jump out at me, but the phrase, the Constitution says how the government works, doesn't make grammatical sense. Constitution doesn't say anything. It's a document. The document does not create the president. It does not create the Congress. Whoops. And it does not create the Supreme Court, right? So these things should all be rewritten to make more sense of what the Constitution actually is. So rather than say that the Constitution, let me go back to that other slide, I can't remember it. The Constitution says how the government works, or the Constitution described how the newly formed United States would be governed. It's sort of the same, but it's more grammatically correct and actually more truthful. And this photograph of the Constitution makes it look, it brings that document to life. And then rewriting the other things, it created the three branches of our government. It's the government. So this gives you the information that you need, and this is across two slides so that it makes it easier to, again, for the presenter to curate the flow of information, how quickly she wants to go through. And we're also looking at another clip art here where the text, actually the text is pretty good, but the clip art is not so good because the clip art is simplistic and it's not talking about the herbs, herbs and spices, which is the subject of this slide. So let's see how to fix that. First, I'm pointing out the clip art and then the text. So the first part of the text was, how do you determine what's high-quality spices versus generic spices? A picture of high-quality spices in a market versus the generic spices you might buy at the dollar store. And this is a visual depiction of that. And then the person would describe what are the differences between high-quality herbs and spices and the stuff you get at the dollar store. Again, the photographs are speaking volumes of what I wouldn't want people to have to read. And here we've got photographs of three typical kinds of spices, whether they're whole herbs, ground spices, or whole seeds. And I've put the shelf date, or rather the life expectancy of each of these herbs, And the written part down here would be when they should go away. So when we get to expires on, and this is something that you would tell, the presenter would tell the audience that they should write, that they would write this down, that this is a very visual depiction of what that text is, right? So it gives you that, it gives you a better idea of the shelf life of herbs because it's actually showing you pictures of herbs. This Analyze and Synthesize method also works for charts. We'll take a look at this one very quickly. It's talking about media use, and it's using a pie chart incorrectly. Well, analyzing this, I'm seeing that usually pie charts add up to 100% of something. In this case, it's just being shown as being this is a large number here, and these are smaller numbers here. But a pie chart isn't a really good way to do that. A better way to do that would be to use a bar chart, or column chart rather. So we start out with a title and the 3 types of media that they're talking about. 39 million landlines, 45 million internet, and then boom, 296 million mobile phones. The last image that comes up is the contrasting one. So we want that to have more impact. We put that at the end, so that's the last piece of data that people see. We also put it in a contrasting color, so that draws attention to it and makes that the most important data point. Here, again, we've got another situation where we've got a lot of text that is in a paragraph form, or rather 10 lines, and we're asking people to make comparisons between, say, line number 5 and line number 10. You have to read them over and over again to figure out what is a larger number, what's a smaller number. So if we make that into a chart and put a picture in there, we've got a very frightened person who is sticking her fingers into her mouth, which I hope is nothing that you all would do in an actual interview situation. But we see now that failure to make eye contact is the biggest problem. That is the first data point that comes up. It is in a contrasting color. And then going down the line, you can see the other problems that occur, and you can see how a lingering handshake relates to having bad posture visually, because this is further up the line. It's further closer to the top and longer. This is closer to the bottom and shorter. So it's very easy to make those comparisons between the data points when you make it into a graph. To conclude, I would like to say that when you start putting less stuff on your slides, when you understand that you incorporate pictures that can take the place of your text, and when you use this Analyze and Synthesize method, that your slides are going to be a lot easier and clearer and easier for your audience to understand. Your audience is going to read less from your slides. Your slides themselves are going to look better, and people are going to understand a lot more what you're talking about when you have those clear slides that have one idea per slide that incorporate photographs, graphs, images, and that are concise and to the point. And best of all, when you follow these instructions, you're going to avoid death by PowerPoint, which I think is pretty much the goal of everyone in this presentation.
Wow.
And now I would like to take time to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Laura. That was fantastic, and we have a ton of questions from the audience. We're probably not going to be able to get to all of those questions right now, but
Sure.
I will say that one of the top questions we have is, how are you annotating your slides in red as you speak?
Very good question. If I can put it back on screen share, I will show you. So let me get my...
Actually, that's something we should mention. So in this particular webinar, you've been doing this as a screen share versus actually having slides.
Yes. So here we are at the screen, and right now, I'm going to get out of the show for a moment, break the magic a little bit, and then I will get back into the screen. All right, so now you are seeing it's question time, and you can probably see my cursor moving around. In the lower corner here, the lower left-hand corner, are these controls. And the one I was using was this pen. And when we click on that, I can have a pen, and I can change the color of it. So now, if I want to bring out, like, here's my email address, dun, da, 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 here's my logo, da, 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 and you can signal that way. You can also use this as a laser pointer, oops, so that you just get that dot to focus people's attention. Once you have quit out of the presentation, the software gives you the opportunity to save those notes or to dump them. And I usually choose to dump them because I don't want them to appear every time I give the presentation.
Gotcha. So you also mentioned that blue with yellow text is old. What color do you suggest, or colors do you suggest we use for background and text colors today?
I would say that if you are creating presentations for an organization such as a corporation, a business, a university, then they probably have a template that's already set up for you. And you would use that template so that everything has already been designed to look well together, and that every presentation that you give is promoting your organization by looking the same as, say, the website or other marketing materials. So using the template's good. There are a number of templates that come with PowerPoint keynote slides that you can use that have been designed to look good and have harmonious colors on them. So it's really, a lot of times it's a question of taste, of things that look well, that provide high contrast. For instance, what you're looking at now is a white background slide with colored text. The only way that could be higher contrast is if the text itself were black and the slide were white. So I would say that if you are curious, you could try different templates that come available with PowerPoint and see what looks good, because those are usually designed to look good with the right colors.
Okay. And one of our other questions here is, does every slide in my presentation need to have a photo?
Nope. No, absolutely not. Just as having a ton of text on a slide can be dreary, having a lot of photos in a presentation can get boring, especially if you are relying on royalty-free sites. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure a lot of folks here have seen images like the handshake, the happy office party, the person at the cyber cafe with a cup of espresso with a design on top. There are a lot of very common clip art, or rather royalty-free images that occur again and again. So it's not, I would go against overloading a presentation for pictures just for picture's sake. When you are putting in pictures in a slide presentation, or you're putting in charts or graphs, it's always for the furthering of the presentation's goal. So if you are trying to deliver financial information to the board of directors, you're not going to have the corporate handshake picture slide on that. You're going to concentrate on the numbers. It really is dependent on the message that you're trying to present and the goal that you have for your presentation.
Can you give some examples for sharing abstract ideas? For example, the benefits of technology, the need for innovation, the importance of business culture. These types of concepts seem harder to illustrate with pictures rather than text.
I have two ways of doing that. One is that if you are on one of those royalty-free websites, or royalty-free image websites, you can actually use those terms in the search. So it might be abstract technology background, or connectivity, or communication, and there would be some ideas there. The other thing that I do to make the abstract more concrete is to use stories. So case studies, or telling an anecdote about someone who faced the same issue or is having a similar experience that the audience is having, or that I want them to have. By describing how what I'm talking about pertains to an actual person or a case study, that will help to solidify an abstract concept in a way that a picture really can't.
Okay. And I think final question, we still have so many to get to. One of the questions here actually is, do you work one-on-one with clients? I'm going to assume and answer for you that the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But can you also recommend some other resources, books, articles, blogs that give concrete examples of ways to display complex content? The list example was good, and this particular person would like some additional structures she can use.
Okay, let's see, presenter to audience announcements. Let's see if I can do stuff here. So, can you see that showing up where I've just typed lynda.com?
Not sure that, nope, that doesn't show up right now, but lynda.com is a good place to go.
Yes, so let me try something different here.
Okay.
I'll make technology work for us.
Nope, there we go. Now we are seeing your sand
dunes.
dunes.
You see some beautiful sand dunes, right?
Yep. So we're running to the end of our time on the Bright Talk here today. And I'd like to thank Laura Foley, our presenter for today. Thank you so much for all this great information. And I hope everyone will join us in 2 weeks for our next Innovation Women Speaker Series on Bright Talk. If you can spread the word about Innovation Women, that would be much appreciated. We're always looking for more speakers and also obviously more speaking opportunities for women and a way to get more women on stage. Thanks again to Laura, and we're going to be concluding today's presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.